Hi, my name is Pat Burris. Welcome to World Class Coaching. Our videos are intended for use by coaches of all sports at all levels. As a two-time Olympian and Olympic coach, I know the importance of having a great coach. As coaches, our responsibilities include inspiring, motivating, and teaching our athletes with the latest and best techniques. Like our athletes, we must always strive to improve our skills in order to help the athlete improve their performance. I commend you on your decision to study the World Class Coaching film series. Train hard because winning is important.
It begins with a dream. Weightlifting, the Olympic sport of the strongest, most powerful athletes on the planet. Nowhere in athletics is there a movement that generates more power and explosiveness than the clean and jerk. This lift is the supreme test of an athlete. This first part of the two-video series deals with the clean and its value to other sports as a primary assistant exercise. The teaching progression in this video will quickly enable one to begin using this movement to develop an incredible foundation of raw strength and power. Nowadays, on the field of competition, skill and technical perfection are no longer enough. Those athletes who lift heavy weights to improve their skills and performance are called champions. Before we begin, we need to go over the training environment of the athlete. The training environment consists of the training facility and related equipment. The lifting area should be clean, ventilated, and well lit. Adequate space should be provided for one or more lifting platforms. The platform is the specific area where athletes will perform the clean lift. Training platforms are usually 8 feet by 8 feet. An extra 2 feet of perimeter surrounds the platform to ensure athletes have enough room to train safely and effectively. The top piece of plywood shown here is seamless and coated with a non-slip polyurethane material, so athletes will have secure footing while lifting. The strips of rubber on each side provide a shock absorbent area for the plates to fall. This helps preserve the equipment, platform, and underlying floor. The design on the platform is called Murray Cross. It is used as a reference point for showing the displacement of the feet while lifting. The bar used in this video is a training and competition weightlifting bar. An official men's bar weighs 20 kilos and the women's bar weighs 15 kilos. Both bars are made of a high-quality steel, which allows for a good flex and spring with no permanent bend. The sleeves of the bar are the larger areas on the ends. The coarse areas are called knurlings and help the athlete to secure a tight grip. The bar is the single most important piece of equipment and should be purchased from reputable companies. The plates or discs shown here are made of hard rubber. They are loaded onto the sleeves and secured with some type of collar. Rubber plates or bumper plates range in weight from 10 to 25 kilos. They are designed to protect the athlete, the bar, and the platform. Plates are stored on various types of racks. The warm-up and technique bar used in this video, shown here, weighs approximately 3 1/2 kilos. It's made from galvanized 1-inch metal tubing with 2-inch PVC tubing sleeves on the end. The inside collars are made of wood. The bar has markings for measuring the width of the grip. This bar was shop fabricated. However, a stick or staff can be used instead. It is used primarily for warming up and practicing technique. It is especially important for this bar to be used with beginning and young lifters so they can slowly build their strength around good, solid technique. Shane Hammond will be demonstrating the clean movement in this video. He has competed in the sports of powerlifting and weightlifting for over 8 years. He is the current world record holder in the squat with a lift of 1,008 pounds, as well as a 4-time national champion in the Olympic sport of weightlifting. He holds all of the American records in the snatch, clean and jerk, and total. Shane represented the USA in the 1999 Pan American Games, where he won the gold medal in the super heavyweight class. The lifting attire begins with the shoes. The most important features of good weightlifting shoes are their support, stability, and the degree of incline they give to the feet, which makes it easier for the lifter to maintain an upright torso while catching and squatting the weight. The bottom of the sole must provide traction on the lifting platform. A hard rubber sole with slight texture works best. The shoes should be as light as possible without compromising any support and stability. Here, Shane is wearing a lifting singlet, used more in competition than in training. For the purpose of this video, the singlet is used to allow the viewer to see each position of the bar more clearly. The lifting garment should be comfortable and allow freedom of movement, especially during the squat. A t-shirt and shorts or sweatpants can be worn instead. Warm-up routines should be performed at the beginning of every training session or competition. They consist of light physical activity and stretching movements that progress from general to specific. The athlete should begin the warm-up at a very easy pace to slowly increase heart and respiration rate, increase blood flow to the working joints and muscles, and increase core and muscle temperatures. Stretching may help prevent injury as well as reduce pain and stiffness. The athlete moves through the full range of motion of various joints in a slow, easy, and controlled manner. After completing the general warm-up and stretching routines, the athlete should begin to perform movements related to his or her sport. The specific warm-up and stretching period really sets the mood or atmosphere for the training session or competition to follow. The primary goal of the warm-up is to prepare the athlete as quickly and efficiently as possible for the training activity or competition event. This learning sequence for the clean was developed by combining over 30 years of study, training, competing, and coaching with over 40 years of professional engineering experience. We use this combination to search for gold, to find out what the best athletes in the world are doing. We offer no magic formulas. We give no secret techniques or information. We make no claim that our way is the only way. We simply have taken advantage of methods available to everyone: research, discussion, observation, video analysis, and application. We sacrificed and put in our time to come up with what we believe is the easiest, most efficient instructional sequence to date. However, we are aware the technique of the clean will continue to evolve and change over time. The lifters of tomorrow will be lifting more and more weight. We hope this video motivates others to develop their own instructional methods and videos, so the clean will become an integral part of the training program of all athletes. This video has various functions. First, it serves as a basic primer and reference for learning the technique of the clean. Second, it builds solid technical segments, then integrates them into connected, free-flowing movements. Third, it strengthens and reinforces the neuromuscular connections involved in every part of the lift. Fourth, it serves as an all-purpose toolbox, each tool or segment ready to be pulled out and applied to any sport or to fix any weak link in the athlete's performance. And fifth, it provides an overview of the clean as possibly the best standalone multi-joint exercise available. This video is separated into 4 levels. Each level has 4 parts and emphasizes specific training objectives. Level 1 focuses on basic preparation, body posture, and body position. Level 2 combines basic strength with speed. Level 3 maximizes explosive strength and power. Level 4 integrates all parts into flowing, coordinated athletic movements. The setup phase has 4 stages. The preparation stage consists of taping, wrapping, chalking, mental preparation, and approaching the bar. This process is the same whether the athlete is training or competing. The most significant variable is the amount of weight on the bar. Tape is used to protect the hands, especially the thumb when the hook grip is used. Taping will help prevent painful blisters. Porous adhesive athletic tape is recommended. Wrist wraps are used if the lifter is experiencing any pain or discomfort in the wrist. Magnesium carbonate or chalk helps to maintain a strong, tight grip on the bar. It provides a layer of protection between the bar and the skin. We begin the preparatory posture stage with the position of the feet or the stance. We need to emphasize the importance of the width of the pulling stance. The feet, or what we call the bearing points of the force of the legs, are placed directly in line with the joints of the hip. A represents lines of force which move from the hips and legs through the feet and into the platform. If we move these bearing points inwards or outwards, the angle and force of these lines change. Let's look at what happens when the feet are moved outside the vertical line A. When we connect line A and line C with line B, we form two 90-degree triangles. Now we can draw upon the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or c equals the square root of a squared plus b squared, to demonstrate two very significant points about the width of the feet. 1. It is our opinion that to lift the same amount of weight, more out of a normal alignment force must be exerted through line C than through lines A, which means there is a more efficient application of force through lines A. And 2, it is our opinion that when the bearing points of the force, the feet, are moved inside or outside these vertical lines A, abnormal directional forces are placed upon the hips and knees, which over time may damage these joints. However, we must note that the hips and knees are also being stressed while squatting, where a wider stance must be used in order to keep the hips under the vertical plane of the bar. Another method for finding the width of the stance is to jump off a small block or other object of 8 to 12 inches in height. The feet should land the most natural position. After a few jumps, the most comfortable stance should be determined. Fix in the mind the position and angle of the feet. Observe that the width of Shane's stance is almost identical as the width of his hips, with the heels closer than the toes. We have now established a solid stance or base of support from which to lift the bar. Hereafter, we will refer to this position of the feet as the pulling stance. Now approach the bar and assume the pulling stance. The feet are placed under the bar so that, while standing erect, the point where the small toe attaches to the foot proper is ahead of the bar. Next, distribute the weight of the body equally on each foot. Feel the pressure throughout the entire sole with the focus or balance point somewhere in the middle of the arch. Keep the shins close, but do not touch the bar at this time. Keep the knees loose and unlocked. They should angle out over the toes for proper tracking of the joint while squatting. Let the arms hang by the sides, loose and relaxed. We now arrive at what may be the single most important area of the human body when it comes to athletic movements, the center of gravity. This is an area located about 2 inches below the navel and extending around the lower torso. Think of the center of gravity as a point in the exact middle of the body. Anteriorly, this is an area located near the insertion point of the hip flexors, an area about midway between the pubic bone and the navel. Finding one's center of gravity is easily learned. Simply exhale and drop the chest and shoulders downwards. Focus all awareness into the pit of the abdomen. Next, imagine a zipper on a pair of jeans and go through the motion of zipping them up. The pelvis is thrust forward and downward. A sensation of strength in the lower belly arises, accompanied by a feeling of relaxation. The body feels heavy and connected to the ground. It is from here where all actions of the human body emanate. The characteristics of an athlete who has been trained to move from the center of gravity is superior balance, flow, and timing, blended with strength, power, and speed. It takes years of training before one is able to perform intense athletic movements while fully centered in this area. Next, one must learn to set the pneumatic brace. Fill the lungs with air and raise the sternum forwards and upwards. Now contract the rhomboid muscles in the middle of the upper back to keep the chest high and the shoulders down and centered. Simultaneously, contract the erector muscles of the lower back to arch and lock the spine into a static position. While raising the chest and setting the pneumatic brace, one has a tendency to forget the center of gravity. Combine the pneumatic brace with the center of gravity by breathing deeply, using the muscles of the diaphragm and the core. Emphasize long, slow exhalations. As the lungs are filled and the chest lifted, thrust the pelvis forward and downward. These two actions integrate supporting strength into the upper and lower body. The last part of the preparatory posture deals with the position of the head. Relax the muscles in the neck and shoulders. Align the head with the trunk. Look straight ahead and slightly up. Many athletes focus on some predetermined object to help their balance and stability while lifting. Set the posture lightly during this stage while standing over the bar. Breathe normal and stay relaxed. The preparatory posture helps recruit more muscle fibers during the actual lift, which establishes strong neuromuscular connections with all of the body links. Note that the strength gains made by beginning weightlifters can be attributed more to neuromuscular adaptations to the training movements than to increases in the strength and size of the muscle fibers. One should have a mental checklist of the preparatory posture and go through it repeatedly until the whole procedure becomes automatic. Develop the ability to set this posture quickly and simultaneously under any circumstance. It can open a door to higher levels of athletic performance, where mind, body, and spirit are one. The deadlift is the third stage of the setup phase. This movement is performed to safely and correctly lift the bar from the ground to the dead hang position. Before lifting an object off the ground, one must always consider the center of gravity. Every object has a center of gravity. While one is standing erect with the arms at the sides, the center of gravity lies directly within the middle of the body in an area about 2 inches below the navel and falls vertically over the base of the feet. The center of gravity of the bar is its center point. As long as the bar is resting on the platform, it and the human body are separate entities. However, when one begins to exert force and lift the bar from the platform, one must consider the combined center of gravity of the human body and the bar. The combined center of gravity is located at some point on a line connecting the center of gravity of the body and the center of gravity of the bar. One should keep the bar as close as possible to the body in order to bring the combined center of gravity of the bar and the body over the center of the base of the feet. The first step in the deadlift movement is to find the width of the clean grip. One of the most important determining factors of the width of the grip is the ability to place the bar on the chest and shoulders in a smooth and efficient manner. Flexibility of the wrist, elbows, and shoulders, as well as the length of the arms, must also be considered. Experiment with different grips until the most comfortable position is found, usually about shoulder width. Another factor is the location of the explosion point on the thighs. Begin with a wide grip and rest the bar on the center of gravity. Slide the hands toward the middle of the bar. As the hands go inward, the bar slides down the leg. Take the time to locate an area on the thighs where it feels one can exert the most power in an upward direction. Make sure the arms remain straight during this process. Also note that this spacing should be wide enough so the hands do not contact the thighs. The width of the grip is then memorized by referencing the markings on the bar. After determining the width between the hands, one should learn how to properly grip the bar. We recommend using the hook grip. The hook grip will secure the hands to the bar, especially during the explosive phase of the clean lift. Be sure to tape the thumb before attempting to use the hook grip. Press the hand down on the bar as shown until the most comfortable position is found. Close the fingers around the bar. Use the index and middle finger to hook the thumb and lock it to the bar. The hook grip will be somewhat painful at first. Allow time for the hands to adjust. If the hook grip cannot be tolerated, we recommend the use of straps to preserve the hands, especially when lifting heavy weights and/or performing repetitions and multiple sets. Hold the ends of one strap together and tightly wrap them either under or over the bar. Lock the strap into place by gripping the bar. A regular grip is used. Now the other hand will do the same independently. We are ready to deadlift the bar. Approach a regular bar and assume the preparatory posture. Now bend over and grip the bar with the hook grip. Maintain the pulling stance and perform the following actions simultaneously. Flex the wrist and rotate the elbows to the sides. Contract the lats and the inner head of the triceps and tuck the bar towards the body with straight arms. We call this action the trilat tuck. Strongly reset the center of gravity and the pneumatic brace and hold the breath while arching the back with a strong static contraction of the rhomboid and erector muscles. Tuck the body forward and down into a squat position until the shins touch the bar. Keep a light pressure against the bar with the shins. Keep the pressure on the feet centered in the middle of the arches. Lower the hips until they are well below the height of the shoulders. Lean forward until the shoulders are directly over the bar. Adjust the head to the most comfortable position while finding a focus point for the line of sight. This is the starting position of the deadlift movement. Now lift the bar off the platform using only the muscles of the legs. Maintain the approximate angle of the back until the bar passes the knees. At this point, keep the back arched, relax the quadriceps, and straighten the trunk. Exhale as the bar travels up the thighs. The deadlift movement ends in the dead hang position, the last stage of the setup phase. The dead hang is a neutral position from which to reset the posture between reps. The first step in the dead hang position is to simply let the bar hang at arm's length. Now reset the posture. Start from the ground and work up. Pulling stance, knees, wrist, elbows, trilat tuck, center of gravity, pneumatic brace, back, shoulders, head, line of sight, breath control. This whole process will become easier and faster over time. We have now completed the setup phase. Hereafter, it is assumed that the posture will be set automatically in each position of the clean lift. Whenever any part of the posture is broken, always return to the preparatory posture, deadlift, or dead hang position to reset. Now let's take a look at the format in which we will highlight the clean movement in each sequence. In this triple frame presentation, we are viewing the path of the bar from start to finish. This is an excellent way to learn how the technique of the athlete affects the bar during each part of the lift. If one wants to plot the trajectory of the bar, then video the athlete in profile or while looking directly at the end of the bar and run the taping on the TV screen in stop action. Now tape a sheet of transparent material on the screen. Put a dot on the end of the bar at each frame and simply connect the dots. Remember, each frame is 1/30th of a second. One now has a very valuable and inexpensive tool for analyzing the technique of the clean. Notice the S pattern of the bar as the weight is lifted from the floor to overhead. One should be monitoring the amount of horizontal displacement, either forwards or backwards, that occurs relative to the vertical line shown. Horizontal displacement is the position of the catch measured from the starting position of the bar. We believe a more efficient technique can be achieved when one explodes upwards and backwards during the pull, placing the feet a few inches behind their starting position. However, there exists such a large number of variations for both successful and unsuccessful lifts that a specific bar trajectory cannot be determined at this time. Located to the left is Shane Hammond in what we call the perfect world. In this setting, Shane learns and practices technique with an empty bar under stress-free conditions. The right frame shows Shane in what we think of as the real world. This is the actual training environment. Any weak links in technique or posture are quickly exposed as the athlete strives to lift heavier and heavier weights. Here the goal is to maintain the technique and form learned in the perfect world while progressively developing strength and power. This is where champions are made. The competition world is the last setting of our format, where maximum weights are attempted under the most intense conditions, Olympic and international championships. The center frame will feature various international elite athletes lifting in the 1998 World Championships in Lahti, Finland. These three settings provide an overview of the art of cleaning heavy weights and demonstrate the purpose of this video: to learn, practice, and perfect the technique and form of the clean. Then use this lift to develop all of the athletic attributes necessary for competition in any sport at any level. Warning: the explosive phase of the pull can cause severe blisters or tear calluses if tape and a hook grip or straps are not used. Many times a regular grip will not be strong enough to hold the bar and can hinder the development of good technique and form. Our journey begins at the heart of the clean lift, the explosion point. This is an area between the middle and upper part of the thighs. It was initially located while one was determining the width of the grip. This position is the easiest to assume and one of the strongest leverage points of the human body. Deadlift a light bar to the dead hang position. Now lower the bar to the explosion point by bending the knees and leaning forward slightly. Next, relax the tri-lat tuck and let the bar hang out in front of the body. While keeping the heels on the platform, push the knees forward until the bar again touches the explosion point and reset the tuck. This position is a starting point for learning the first movement of the clean. In this first stage, the movement is learned at a very slow and controlled speed. Lift the bar by extending the knee joints and the trunk. Don't lock the knees. Stretch up and back. Simultaneously elevate or shrug the shoulders forward and up in an attempt to touch the lobes of the ears. Keep the head in alignment with the trunk and the line of sight relative to the position of the head. This helps to maintain an awareness of the position of the bar at all times. Another way to feel this movement is to raise the chest or stretch the sternum upwards to a point where they feel as if they leave the body. This action will make the weight feel lighter and also help to maintain the alignment of the head and trunk. Notice that Shane is bending backwards from the waist. This action occurs when practicing or training the technique from this position. The body will be straighter and angled away from the bar during the actual lift when more of a jumping action is performed. Keep the feet flat on the platform. Do not go onto the balls of the feet. The pressure on the foot will move from the middle to the back of the arch. The maximum extension point is reached when the body cannot be raised any higher with the feet flat on the platform. Freeze in this position to fix it in the mind. Now return to the explosion point. Practice until the movement becomes comfortable. In the next stage, the movement is performed faster. Feel the power of the body in this position. Practice until the movement becomes natural. Now one progresses to the explosive stage. Begin with the feet. As mentioned before, keep the feet flat during this movement. First practice without the bar. When the jump can be performed through the middle of the foot without rising on the toes, progress to a light, then regular bar. Learn to catch the bar in a comfortable position on the thighs upon landing after the jump. Use the legs, hips, and lower back as shock absorbers to lessen the impact. Incredible explosive power can be developed by progressively using heavier weights in this movement, but one should always keep in mind that the pull-under is the next motion to be performed. While it has been said that the maximum extension point is that part of the lift where one cannot raise the body any higher, it must be noted that every athlete will develop their own instinctive feelings of when that point has been reached. However, a word of caution. Do not think of the pull as a powerful jumping motion that creates hang time. One is literally walking a tightrope here, overextending the pull or not extending the pull enough. This is especially felt during the clean where heavy weights are lifted. One must develop a sort of sixth sense when it is time to move under the bar. A sign can be placed on the ceiling directly overhead for assistance. The sign should be moved back and forth until the right position is felt during the lift. Various designs or words can be written on the sign to signal one is at the maximum explosion point. Maybe a picture of the in-laws. One should only be able to see the sign in the upper portion of the field of vision when the maximum extension point has been reached. Remember, one will be at this position only for an instant, mere hundredths of a second. Now let's take a look at this movement in our three different settings. We can see the full power of the body in this motion. This is the most explosive position of the pull and can be thought of as a cork popping off a champagne bottle. a sort of pop to the top. Progressively heavier weights can be used as long as good form is maintained. This movement has great application in all sports that involve generating a great deal of power in a very short range of motion. Once this type of hard, abrupt energy with the legs, hips, and upper body has been developed, it can be applied to any athletic event. On the left, Shane is performing the full lift with a regular bar. Notice the feet are flat at the explosion point and the shoulders are aligned directly above the bar. The bar remains tucked throughout the extension. Notice how the head stays in alignment at the maximum extension point despite the action of the body going up and back. This action is performed by keeping the chin down and lowering the line of sight. On the right, Shane is performing the movement with 182.5 kilograms, or roughly 402 pounds. This weight is about 82% of his maximum lift. Shane has developed his own style of the clean movement. He has adjusted the basic technique of the lift to where it works well with his physical stature, as all athletes must do. These technical modifications will become smaller and smaller as he continues to train and lift heavier weights. In the center frame, we see the styles of various elite athletes performing the movement at the 1998 World Championships. As we watch these athletes, think of the explosion point as that part of the lift where maximum power can be applied to the bar, a sort of power position. Note that the location will vary due to individual differences in the length of the limbs. A more accurate description of this area would be to call it an explosion phase rather than an explosion point, because the narrow width of the grip draws out the explosiveness of the clean pull by preventing the bar from contacting the body's center of gravity or point of maximum leverage. However, for simplicity, we refer to this area as the explosion point. Remember that the explosion point is the only area of the body that will contact the bar during the lift, other than the hands, the shins at the beginning of the liftoff, and the shoulders when the bar is received at the end of the pull. It is very important for the arms to remain straight. Think of them merely as cables attached to the bar. During this part of the clean, there will be a strong tendency to bend the arms and place the bar as close as possible to the center of gravity where the strength of the maximum leverage point can be felt. However, this urge must be resisted and trained out because any bend in the arms can reduce the power of the movement due to the re-straightening of the arms as the explosive force of going into the maximum extension point is applied to the bar. While exploding, there is a tendency for the bar to fly away from the body. It is very important to keep the bar tucked close throughout the movement. This is accomplished by flexing the wrist, rotating the elbows out, and engaging the trilat tuck. Of course, one cannot fully flex the wrist with a heavy weight. However, this simple tiny action can be the difference between a successful or unsuccessful lift. Notice how Shane's feet remain flat during the jump. We do not recommend rising up on the toes because 1. The weight will be displaced forward, 2. The bearing point of the force of the legs will become smaller and less stable, and 3. The bar can be elevated to a higher net effective position while staying flat-footed and extending up and back. One would not be able to balance in this position while on the toes. We recognize that most world champions rise up on their toes and are lifting world records. However, we believe this technique will eventually be discarded as more research is done on the pulling motion. The maximum extension point to pull under movement develops one's ability to get quickly under the bar. Most beginners in weightlifting have a strong desire to use their bicep muscles in the arms during the pull. Well, now is their chance. Deadlift a light bar to the dead hang position. Slowly extend to the maximum extension point and freeze. Begin the movement with the shoulders fully elevated and the arms straight. Slowly pull the bar upwards, keeping the wrist flexed. Try to keep the elbows pointed upwards and higher than the wrist while maintaining the trilat tuck. All of these actions keep the weight close to the body. Their combined effect counters any tendency for the bar to swing out. While the bar must be kept as close as possible during this movement, it never makes contact with the body. Be very careful not to slump forward to meet the bar with the chest or sternum at the top of the movement. Try to keep the torso angled away from the bar and drop the hips straight down. As the bar goes up, the body goes down. Coordinate the speed of these two separate motions. These actions simulate the body being pulled under the bar from the maximum extension point. This motion is similar to an upright row exercise. The only difference is the legs bending and squatting. Notice the feet do not move while the movement is being performed at a slow and controlled speed. Practice until these two motions are smooth and coordinated. Next, one learns to jump from the pulling stance out into the squatting stance. Determine the width of the squat stance while performing the front squat movement. The feet will be spaced roughly shoulder width apart. The wider spacing allows the hips to rest between the ankles, which enables one to keep the torso straight and upright. Practice the movement until the most comfortable stance is discovered, then mark or reference the spacing. From the pulling stance, lightly jump out and back to the squat stance, and then back again to the pulling stance. Practice without a bar until the motion feels comfortable. Notice how the feet are quickly brought back to the pulling stance in order to set up for another repetition. Also notice the path of the bar and how high it travels. Again, be careful not to come too close to the face. In this last stage, one learns how to explode downward. Again, first practice the movement without the bar. Combine the pull-under movement with a stomping motion. Keep the elbows high and pointed upwards. Notice how explosively the feet land on the platform. This action of jumping or stomping down acts as a high-intensity stimulus, which seems to activate large, fast-conducting neurons. Practice this movement until a strong feeling of explosiveness and quickness is developed. Make sure the feet land in the front squat position. Also take care not to injure the feet, ankles, knees, or other areas with the force of the landing. As mentioned before, a sign overhead can be used to trigger the use of the arms and the explosion of the body downwards. The goal is to explode upwards, catch a glimpse of the sign, then explode downwards. The result is a stronger neural impulse, which means an increase in the speed of the descent. When one feels comfortable with this movement, begin integrating it with the explosion point to maximum extension point. The idea is to alternate these two movements during a set to develop one smooth, coordinated motion. Now let's take a look at our three different settings. Notice the speed at which Shane is able to perform this movement. While this type of quickness is crucial for being able to get under heavy weights, ironically, it is initially developed while using little or no weight. On the right, Shane is lifting over 400 pounds. Let's compare the speed of this lift to the other, where Shane is only lifting the bar. Remember, each frame of the video is 1/30th of a second. The window time of going under the bar is extremely small. Speed of descent is a quality greatly desired in almost all sport activity. Notice how quickly these athletes pull under the bar to gain better position and leverage. Strengthening the power base of the involved muscle groups will increase the speed of execution of these movements and help decrease the response time. A faster response time equals a faster athlete, and in today's world, speed is many times the deciding factor. This movement will impart a tremendous velocity to the bar. Be sure to learn and practice the movement at a slow and controlled speed before proceeding at a faster pace. One is learning how to combine different sections into a smooth, flowing motion. As before, deadlift the light bar to the dead hang position. Now position the bar at the explosion point and freeze. Slowly extend to the maximum extension point and perform the pull under. Take extra care to keep the speed slow until the path of the bar upward becomes completely natural. The feet stay on the platform and do not move at this time. When the movement is thoroughly familiar and being performed in a safe and efficient manner, increase the speed. When this feels comfortable, proceed to the explosive stage. Heavy weights can quickly be used as it is one of the strongest movements possible by the human body. However, don't sacrifice technique for strength. Look at the power being developed when these two movements are combined. Notice how fast Shane pulls under the bar. Observe how quickly the feet jump from the pulling stance out to the squat stance and then back again to the pulling stance. This makes a nice plyometric exercise as well because it teaches the athlete to touch and go with the feet as quickly as possible. Let's return to our three settings. Observe the explosiveness of these athletes. Watch how the arms remain straight until the maximum extension point, at which time they start the pull under. One of the most important points to remember during this movement is not to use the arms before fully extending. Resist the urge to reverse curl the bar or bend the arms to place the bar at the anterior point of the center of gravity. Remember, The arms can only bend after one extends into the maximum extension point. Any use of the arms before the maximum extension point can result in a considerable reduction of the power that can be imparted to the bar by the body as a whole. If one has trouble accepting this, look at the size of the arms. Now compare the overall muscle mass of the arms to that of the legs, hips, lower back, and shoulders. Which is stronger? If one uses the arms first, it cancels out much of the power of the other muscle groups. Always remember, body first, arms second, never together. If over time one still has a tendency to use the arms prematurely, use a sign on the ceiling as a cue to pull under as mentioned before, or think shrug first, then pull under. During the lift, this movement is too fast to separate it into parts. One simply has to develop the feeling while training. Look at the fluidity and smoothness of these athletes. In our opinion, there is no better exercise for developing maximum short-range explosiveness, which gives the athlete unstoppable explosive speed and power, especially at close range. This exercise is invaluable to football players and demonstrates the name of the game for all contact sports. Before one learns how to rack or catch the bar on the shoulders and squat the weight, one must learn how to correctly miss and drop the bar. It's not a matter of if one will miss the bar, it's a matter of when one will miss the bar. One can quickly develop the strength to pull more weight than can be correctly received and supported. Learning how to miss or get out from under a heavy weight when things go wrong is necessary to avoid injury. Many times the beginner will pull incorrectly or attempt weights that are too heavy for his or her level of technique and skill. The result is the bar will not land in a position where it can be balanced on the chest and shoulders. When the bar is not supported, there is only one general direction it is going, and that is downward. One must be able to get out from under the bar in a quick and efficient manner. If the momentum of the bar knocks one backwards and off balance, go with the motion, jump or roll backwards. Don't try to resist the mass of the weight. If the momentum of the weight collapses one's support, redirect the downward path of the bar by bending forward at the waist, moving the knees back and away from the bar, and letting the elbows drop between or outside the thighs. Never let the elbows touch the knees. In this situation, one will instinctively feel the exact moment to eject from the bar. Take a light bar and incorporate similar stretching movements into the workout and practice missing with very light weights until one learns how to protect the areas of the body most susceptible to injury in this motion, namely the wrist, knees, and back. Then stop. This is not a feeling with which you want to become familiar. The best way to avoid injury is to learn and practice good technique. During this discussion, we have been showing elite athletes missing with extremely heavy weights in a world championship setting. What better way to learn than the lessons shown here? One last note, don't be overly concerned. Weightlifting is one of the safest sports. Injuries are very rare and usually more of a chronic nature. Next, one must learn how to safely drop the bar from the shoulders to the ground after the clean movement has been performed. While standing with the weight across the shoulders, gradually bend forward and loosen the support to allow the bar to fall safely in front. Notice a loose grip is maintained until after the bar passes the height of the waist. Release the grip by opening the hands. Keep the hands open and parallel to the ground to control the bounce of the bar from the platform. We recommend the use of bumper plates when performing cleans. Iron plates can destroy the platform and the bar when dropped from shoulder height. We define the front squat as the movement where one performs a squat motion with the bar balanced and supported on the chest, shoulders, and hands. For simplicity, we have 3 positions in the front squat: 1/3, 2/3, and full. If there is an inherent lack of flexibility or structure within the body that prevents one from supporting the weight in the front and going into a squat, stretching exercises for the shoulders, elbows, and wrists can be performed. Lifting shoes or some object placed under the heels can help with the depth of the squat to some extent. It is recommended one slowly develop flexibility, strength, and balance at a high position first, and then work down. Before beginning the front squat, one must first establish his or her squatting stance. The feet are angled out with the heels closer than the toes. This allows for the most efficient tracking motion of the knee joint. The width of the feet or base of support must be wide enough to balance and support heavy weights while squatting on or between the ankles. This is important because it helps the hips to remain under the bar, which in turn helps keep the back arched and erect. The bar can then be supported strongly as well as comfortably on the chest, shoulders, and hands throughout the movement. To begin, deadlift a light or regular bar to the dead hang position. Pull the bar up and rest it on the chest and shoulders. The bar should be taken from a pair of squat stands if plates or discs are added. Move the bar around to find the most comfortable position. A sort of pocket will be felt. Now thrust the anterior deltoids and elbows forward and inward. Simultaneously stretch the body upward as if trying to increase one's height. Now lock this structure in place with the action of the pneumatic brace and center of gravity. Set the pneumatic brace by inhaling and filling the lungs with air. Feel the chest rise and brace the bar. Now connect the pneumatic brace and the center of gravity by thrusting the pelvis slightly forward and down while keeping the lungs inflated and the chest high. Feel the strength of the body in this position and think of it as a solid base or platform upon which to catch and support heavy weights. At times when a heavy weight is received or held in the front squat position, it will place excessive pressure on the area of the throat. There are two types of chokes occurring at this time, which can cause one to black out or lose consciousness. The first is the air choke, where the passageway to the lungs is being blocked by the pressure of the bar and weights. This is quickly felt, and the bar can be adjusted to where one can get enough air to finish the movement. The second type of choke is more subtle and dangerous. This is a blood choke, where the bar is compressing the arteries in the area of the neck. It is relatively painless, almost to the point of being enjoyable. Many times, one will not be aware this choke is occurring until it is too late to adjust the bar. If one is able to feel the blood choke coming on, quickly try to adjust the weight. If one still feels dizzy, sees black spots, or experiences tunnel vision, simply drop the bar as previously described. Don't worry, no brain damage will occur from doing this exercise. Now one is ready to squat the weight. Maintain a solid base of support as previously described and take several quick breaths. Don't hyperventilate. Now take one deep inhalation and hold the breath. Remember to breathe from the core or the diaphragm. While holding the breath, squat to a depth approximately 1/3 the distance of the full movement. Exhale slowly from the diaphragm while rising. Do not let the air out of the lungs too quickly because it will reduce the strength and support of the pneumatic brace. Coordinate the breaths while doing repetitions to develop a rhythm of breathing that matches the motion of the squat. Inhale at the top or immediately while descending. Exhale while rising or immediately after passing the sticking point of the lift. The sticking point being the area of the squat where one has the least amount of leverage and tends to falter with the weight. When the 1/3 squat position feels comfortable, progress to a 2/3 squat position and continue working until one can comfortably squat to the full depth, which is usually at a point where the ankles touch or are very close to the back of the leg. When the movement and depth of the squat become comfortable, increase the speed of the descent to prepare for catching and supporting the bar after it has been pulled from the floor. It is important not to bounce out of the bottom position while doing this movement. The rule is, drop fast, then immediately begin putting on the brakes. One should feel a smooth, controlled descent into the bottom position and then a quick, light, springy drive upwards. While rising, concentrate upon pushing the hips forward and upward under the bar until standing erect. Progress from a 1/3 to a full squat position. Keep the weights light until the motion is comfortable. After one's optimal squatting position has been determined, regardless of the depth, the weight on the bar can be slowly increased. One should progressively try to match the weights used in the clean pull with those used in the front squat. This will ensure that one can stand up with any weight that is cleaned and help to prevent injuries and overtraining. Notice the importance of the support of the upper body. See how the elbows are used to help hold the weight while the body drives upwards. Shane is a world record holder in the back squat with a lift of 1,008 pounds. He has a tremendous bottom position. Notice the stationary position of his head, wrist, elbows, and shoulders as he squats upwards. Observe how his hips move up and forward as he comes out of the bottom position. As one begins to squat, the hips have a tendency to drift or be pushed backward behind the vertical plane of the bar, which causes the supporting structure of the upper body to move forward and down. While heavy weights will always cause this to occur to some degree, always strive to keep the trunk as rigid and upright as possible while simultaneously positioning the hips directly under the bar. As one begins to squat down, feel the knees pushing out over the toes and the hips moving toward the ankles, a similar motion to sitting in a chair. Also take care to maintain the supporting structure of the upper body throughout the descent. During rising, keep the hips in, the knees pushed out over the toes, the back straight, shoulders and elbows forward, up and in, and the head tilted slightly backward with the chin held high. The position of the head is very important because where the head goes, the body will follow. For a little extra momentum, the head can be snapped upward as one rises out of the low squat position. Always reset the posture after each repetition. Athletes need great leg strength to rise from the full squat position. However, the front squat develops almost all of the major muscle groups of the body. When combined with the clean pulling movement, it makes for an unbeatable overall strength and conditioning exercise. The benefits are many, including development of supporting and stabilizing muscle groups and powerful as well as functional leg, hip, upper, and lower back strength. The front squat is one of the most strenuous weight training exercises. It builds incredible intestinal fortitude, which prepares one for that moment when it's time to go under a heavy weight. In this situation, one only has two paths to take, that of the predator or the prey. Warning: this is another movement that must be practiced with caution. Proceed slowly and always with an awareness of the location of the bar. Avoid bringing the bar too close to the face as it is caught on the shoulders. Now that one has established the front squat, the next part of the clean can be added, the maximum extension point to front squat. Deadlift a light bar to the dead hang position. Now extend into the maximum extension point and freeze. From this position, slowly combine the pull under and front squat into one motion. As the weight is pulled up, the elbows remain high until the point they are rotated under the bar. The feet lightly jump out into the squat stance as the bar is caught on the chest and shoulders. First catch the bar at the 1/3 squat position. After this depth becomes comfortable, work down to a 2/3 squat position. When one has adjusted to the 2/3 squat position, continue working down until reaching the full squat position. If this position is too painful or one does not have adequate flexibility to squat at this depth, stay at a level that is comfortable. Give the body time to adjust. It is also important to avoid crashing into the full squat position. The movement should be performed smoothly and with control. Timing and rhythm are crucial. More will be said about how to receive the weight at the end of this section. Reinforce the action of the wrist, elbows, and trilat tuck to keep the bar in line and close to the body during the pull under. Remember, flex the wrist, point the elbows out and up, and engage the trilat tuck. Do not float under the bar. Learn the movement at a slow speed and then progress to an explosive action as it becomes comfortable. Keep the weights light and the movement fast. Heavy weights should not be used. They will trigger an inhibitory effect by proprioceptors within the muscles, which can cause one to lock up or pull under half-heartedly. This is not the desired training effect, nor is it something to be practiced. This is a good time to discuss the technique of whipping the elbows. Muay Thai fighters are probably the most skilled athletes in the world when it comes to using the elbows. One can quickly see how these fighters use this movement to deliver crushing blows to their opponents. The elbows can be used in the clean movement as well to actually whip oneself under the bar. The speed and power of the elbows going from above the bar in the pull to below the bar in the rack actually create a downward force, which helps to increase the speed of the descent under the bar. The whipping action of the elbows combined with the pulling action of the arms helps one to receive the bar in the optimal position to support the weight while descending into the front squat. The maximum extension point to front squat movement is the most important skill of the clean. That is, to meet the bar at the maximum height it is lifted. Catching the bar with little or no impact is the primary goal. One should feel as if the weight was gently placed on the chest and shoulders. As we watch these athletes, keep in mind the most difficult part of this movement is developing a constant awareness of the weight and positioning oneself to receive it onto the chest and shoulders. Keeping the bar close throughout the movement will help develop this kinesthetic sense. Many athletes miss the weight at this point because they feel not enough momentum or upward velocity has been imparted to the bar and lose the courage to pull under. This movement can help overcome these feelings. Eventually, the speed and power to lift heavier weights can be developed, which in turn will further increase the speed of the pull under during the complete clean movement. Notice the tremendous speed of these athletes as they pull under the bar. Perhaps no one has described the process of going under the bar better than Arthur Dressler in his book, The Weightlifting Encyclopedia, A Guide to World-Class Performance. In the section entitled, The Value of Limited Bar Drop, he states 4 very important principles that are crucial in going under the bar. 1. The greater the momentum the lifter can apply to the bar before descending under it, the more time the lifter will have before the bar begins to fall. 2. Shorten the distance the lifter has to drop by avoiding overextension of the body and go no lower than is necessary to fix the bar. 3. Minimize the time spent in the unsupported squat under phase by moving under the bar as quickly as possible, interacting energetically with the bar so as to use it as a basis for increasing the speed of the descent and using the forces generated by the body itself in order to increase the speed of the descent. And 4. Exert upward force on the bar as early as possible in the squat under phase of the pull, which helps to transmit force from the floor to the bar and to cause the bar to achieve greater height than it would merely through the force applied during the explosion phases of the pull. Warning: the explosion point to front squat is the fastest, most explosive movement in the clean. Because of the strength and power generated from the explosion point, one must be extremely careful while lifting. It is absolutely critical to know the position of the bar at all times. To facilitate the learning process, one has been building strong neuromuscular connections around efficient technical movements and then linking them together. Now one can integrate the explosion point to maximum extension point, the maximum extension point to pull under, and the front squat movements. Use a light bar and go from one movement to the next in a smooth and uninterrupted motion. Keep a slow and controlled speed until the movements come together as one. First, catch the bar at the 1/3 squat position. This movement is commonly referred to as the power clean from the hang position, an exercise practiced by most strength athletes. After this depth becomes comfortable, work down to a 2/3 squat position, which could also be considered a power clean movement. That is, catching and squatting the weight at any height where the thighs are above a parallel position in relation to the ground. While performing the power clean, it is very important that the width of the front squat not be exceeded. If one is jumping out beyond the normal squat stance, the weight is too heavy and should be lowered. Good technique is critical here. To avoid confusion about the depth of the power clean, we will refer to this movement as being performed in either the 1/3 or 2/3 squat position, and we will not use the label power clean throughout the rest of this video. Use the arms and elbows to pull and whip under the bar. Progress to faster and faster speeds until the explosiveness of the movement is felt. Explode up and then explode down. This phrase describes the whipping action of the trunk combined with the jumping action of the legs as the bar goes up, and the pulling and whipping power of the arms and elbows blended with the stomping action of the feet as one goes down. Alternate this movement with the maximum extension point to front squat movement during a set to develop a strong feeling of quickly and explosively going under the bar. Much practice is needed before this movement begins to feel natural. Add weight slowly and progressively. Notice how Shane's feet jump out to the squat stance to receive the bar. He is very balanced while squatting with his tremendous weight. Observe how the explosion up and back causes his feet to land behind their starting point. Also notice he does not extend high on the toes during this explosive phase of the pull, just enough to jump out to the squat stance. Jumping back and staying flat-footed are very natural motions for him, especially with heavy weights. Observe how these athletes jump up and back to receive the weight. It has been our observation and training that fewer lifts are lost if the athlete receives the bar at a point well behind the starting position. The direction of the extension will carry the body upwards and backwards, causing the feet to land approximately 4 inches behind their starting position. Also notice how they tend to keep their heels down at the top of the pull. Remaining flat-footed keeps the bar centered over the base of the feet, which shortens the line of the combined center of gravity. From this point of maximum leverage, more reactive forces can be generated by using the entire surface area of the feet against the platform, as opposed to using a much smaller base while up on the toes. The degree to which the heels stay flat may depend upon training and one's athletic ability, especially as heavier weights are lifted. Liftoff is the movement from the ground to a height just above the knees. Much like the first stage of a rocket, the liftoff movement is performed to overcome the inertia of the bar. To begin, assume the starting position of the deadlift. Hereafter, we will refer to this as the starting position of the liftoff. Always remember to set the posture before lifting the bar off the platform. Slowly and smoothly push the platform down with the legs. As the plates come off the floor, begin easing the bar backwards, moving the shins into a vertical position as the bar continues upwards. Simultaneously move the knees backward just enough to avoid contact with the bar. One will feel the pressure in the feet move back towards the heels. Stop and freeze at a point just above the knees with the bar centered over the base of the feet and the shoulders directly over the bar. Be sure to keep the shoulders higher than the hips. This action of leaning forward or staying over the bar greatly tests the strength of the lower back. While it is critical that the hips remain lower than the shoulders throughout the lift, it is especially important for the back to maintain this angle when the bar reaches the height of the knees. The hips always have a tendency to rise faster than the shoulders, especially if the bar is yanked off the platform. To counter this, ease the bar off the platform and begin the lift with a slightly forward and upward stretching motion of the sternum, similar to setting the pneumatic brace. One can also imagine the platform resting on a giant spring and the bar as a fixed object which cannot be moved. Simply hold onto the bar and push the platform down with the legs. The resistance feels constant and smooth because of the action of the giant spring. One must really focus on trying to maintain a smooth and continuous acceleration of the bar as it travels upwards into the explosion point. This requires keeping the center of gravity of the bar as close as possible to the plane of the body's center of gravity throughout the movement. This action keeps the combined center of gravity closer to the body, which enables one to constantly exert force from a point of maximum leverage. Keep practicing the liftoff at a very slow speed until the action becomes smooth and controlled. Over time, one should gradually increase the speed off the ground because the name of the game is acceleration. Observe how the angle of Shane's back remains approximately the same until passing the height of the knees, and that the bar does not move in a vertical line but tracks backwards towards his shins. Notice how he keeps the weight close as possible to his body. Here Shane is using a technique called the static start, so named because there is no movement of the body before the liftoff. These athletes are using a dynamic start technique where there is a preliminary movement being performed before the bar is lifted off the platform. This technique is favored by many because it creates a sort of stretch reflex mechanism in the muscles, which possibly adds more force to the liftoff. There are several variations of the dynamic start, but we recommend starting from a static position first before finding which style is the most effective. Try practicing with and without the technique during a set to feel the difference of the weight. The liftoff is one of the most basic exercises for developing static strength in the lower back. This area is the weakest link of most athletes. Being able to hold a static contraction of the erectors and rhomboids and other muscles in the back while lifting heavy objects or opponents helps protect the spine. While training the liftoff movement, add weight slowly and progressively, and pay special attention to how long it takes the lower back to recuperate between training sessions. Don't overtrain this area. We are now halfway through the learning sequence of the clean. Review and keep practicing the movements learned in the previous levels. Progressively add weight to the bar. The goal is to strengthen each individual part, then integrate all parts into a smooth flowing lift. The finished product will be a complete multi-joint exercise that works all major muscle groups. Experiment and find which movements translate best to your sport. The scoop, or what is also called the double knee bend, is the mysterious link between the liftoff and the explosion point, or what many coaches refer to as the transition phase between the first pull and the second pull. The scoop to the explosion point is taught in 3 stages: hip thrust, trunk whip, and the combination of the two, what we call hip and whip. Warning: these movements can cause the bar to hit or scrape the explosion point with considerable force. Always wear protective clothing on the thighs. Before beginning, one should re-establish the width of the grip to find the most comfortable explosion point. Remember, the explosion point is an area located around mid to upper thigh. Bounce a light bar onto this area until the most comfortable position is found. Now position a light bar at a height just above the knees, which is the ending position of the liftoff and the beginning position of the scoop. One can place the bar at this starting position either from the dead hang or using the liftoff movement. Slowly push the knees forward and under the bar. Continue until the explosion point firmly touches the center of the bar. Keep the arms straight, the wrists flexed, the elbows out, the trilat tuck engaged, and the shoulders over the bar. Freeze at the explosion point. Do not explode and/or extend upwards. When this movement is comfortable, progressively increase the speed of the hips and the impact of the explosion point into the bar. Continue to increase the speed and the force of impact until the hips are literally exploding the thighs into the bar, knocking it away from the body. It is critical that the heels remain flat on the platform during this movement. As the knees are pushed under the bar, the pressure in the feet should not go past the balls of the feet. Practice slowly until this motion is comfortable. Do not skip over this technique. If the heels are allowed to come up now, it can become an unbreakable habit down the road when heavy weights are attempted. Remember, one normally cannot exert maximum force while up on the toes. During the action of the hip thrust, we are discovering and focusing on the speed and explosive power of the hips. This movement occurs because of the unique position of the hamstring muscles. They cross both the knee and the hip joints, causing leg flexion and trunk extension when contracted. The legs were extended during the liftoff by the action of the quadriceps. Once the bar passes the knees, the hamstrings contract and the quadriceps relax, which allows the knees to bend or flex once more, hence the phrase double knee bend. This action of the changing of the guard, so to speak, is the primary reason for the decrease in the upward velocity of the bar. The hip thrust is practiced to decrease this change over time and minimize the time the bar is in this area. For maximum speed of this movement, it helps to visualize the following. Take the explosion point to the bar, not the bar to the explosion point. The hip thrust teaches the big bang technique. Just performing the hip thrust in the lift is poor technique because this action will send the bar flying away from the body. It is practiced initially and from time to time in training to develop and maximize the speed and explosiveness of the hips. Having said this, note that if this movement is not learned first, maximum speed will never be established in the lift. Now we move on to the more sensitive stage of the scoop, the trunk whip. Place a light bar above the knees as before. Begin the movement by slowly extending the trunk. Do not push the knees under the bar. Slowly stand up until the bar touches the explosion point. There should be very little or no impact with the bar. Keep the arms straight, the wrists flexed, the elbows out, the trilat tuck engaged, and the shoulders over the bar. Freeze at the explosion point. Do not jump and/or extend upwards. When this movement is comfortable, progressively increase the speed of the trunk extension until one is standing up with the bar as fast as possible. Once the trunk whip becomes comfortable with a light bar, switch to a regular bar and repeat the whole process. The power of the hips into the bar will be reduced by the trunk extension. The direction of the impact is now more upward than outward. Keep the bar close to the explosion point as if trying to rein in the line of the combined center of gravity. Keep increasing the speed until the body can position the bar from the knees to the explosion point faster than the human eye can follow. Because this distance is so short, incredible speed can be developed. The trunk whip movement focuses on extending the trunk with very little action of the hips. During the hip thrust, one was driving the hips into the bar. During the trunk whip, the idea is to drive or stand up with the bar as fast as possible. In this movement, one will feel the bar coming towards the body more than the body going into the bar. Whereas before one was slamming into the bar at the explosion point, now one turns the big bang technique into a brushing technique. We do not recommend performing the trunk whip motion only during the scoop. Maximum speed and explosiveness will not be developed, and one will not be able to take full advantage of the explosion point to impart more upward velocity to the bar. Now one must combine the hip thrust and the trunk whip movements together to form a solid scooping motion, the flavor of which will be decided by one's preference for either the big bang or brush style. After a solid hip thrust motion is developed, we lean towards more of a brushing style while performing the clean because of the location of the explosion point. However, there are too many individual differences of personality and body types for us to recommend one style over the other. This movement literally becomes a work of art that one will piece together over time. To begin the hip and whip motion, place a light bar above the knees at the beginning position of the scoop. Slowly push the knees under the bar and drive the hips forward while simultaneously extending the trunk and standing up. When this action is comfortable, progressively increase the speed of the hip and whip motion until the explosion point is contacting the bar. As before, keep the arms straight, the wrists flexed, the elbows out, the trilac tuck engaged, and the shoulders over the bar. Freeze at the explosion point. The momentum upwards created by this motion must be stopped at the explosion point for now. One will feel the body slightly lifted upwards after the brakes have been applied. Nourish and harness this feeling of power because it will be unleashed into the extension during the next sequence. The difference in the combined action of the hips and trunk is very subtle and is a quality felt more by the athlete than can be coached or analyzed by video. We recommend alternating the bang and brush styles in a set to speed up the process of combining these movements and to find the style for which one is best suited. We stress that one should be very patient while learning this part of the lift. Take the time to perfect this movement because it is the key to lifting heavier weights. Now let's examine the action of the scoop more closely. Notice how Shane favors the big bang style. This greatly increases his speed and explosiveness, but he must counter the impact of the explosion point into the bar by focusing on keeping the bar extremely close. Observe the combined action of his hips and trunk. During this action, the line of the combined center of gravity of the body and the bar becomes shorter and shorter. However, because of the narrow width of the grip, the two center of gravities will not meet at the explosion point. The explosion point during the clean is really more of an explosion phase, but the scooping motion keeps it very quick and deliberate. Some coaches believe the scooping motion occurs naturally and should not or cannot be taught. For us, the scooping motion is the secret to lifting heavy weights. Think of the velocity that one is able to impart to the bar during the lift. As the bar travels upward, one tries to find the most efficient way to use the lengths of the body to impart more and more velocity to the bar, while gravity constantly acts to stop the upward velocity of the bar by pulling it back to the platform. The primary weak link in the lifting motion is the inability to prevent a decrease in the velocity of the bar as it passes the knees and enters the beginning position of the scoop. A very efficient scooping motion must be used in order to minimize the time available for the bar to decrease in upward velocity. With light weights, one has a tendency to decrease this time by scooping the bar to the explosion point of the body as quickly as possible. With heavy weights, one has a tendency to decrease this time by scooping the explosion point of the body to the bar as quickly as possible. One should always practice the latter, no matter how much weight is on the bar. Remember, just the opposite is true during the lift-off movement, when one must bring the bar to the body in order to maintain the base of support. Ideally, one could increase the upward velocity all the way through the lift and catch the bar on its upward path. However, in the real world, the goal of all athletes learning the clean movement is to catch the weight at the instant before it starts downward toward the platform. Practice every rep of every set with the full intention of achieving this weightless state, not only to enhance athletic ability, but also to reduce wear and tear on the body to a minimum. This action is the essence of weightlifting, that point where the weight becomes weightless. No words can describe this point in space and time, and the heavier the weight, the more exhilarating the feeling. With the end of this section on the scoop, we have returned to the heart of the lift. Now the video will take a different direction as we focus primarily on linking each part of the lift into one smooth, uninterrupted motion. The goal is to constantly strengthen, reinforce, and connect these more complex neuromuscular patterns with those from previous levels. We recommend combining or alternating these movements during a set. However, don't sacrifice technique for strength. The explosion point is the transition from the scoop to the maximum extension point. In our opinion, how one moves through this area determines the outcome of the lift more than any other factor. The scoop to maximum extension point is practiced in 4 stages: hip thrust, trunk whip, hip and whip, and hip and whip with explosion. Begin with the hip thrust motion. With a light bar, combine the movements of the scoop to explosion point with the explosion point to maximum extension point. Start very slowly, then gradually increase the speed. Switch to a regular bar when this movement is comfortable. Next, perform the trunk whip motion. Slowly connect the movements. Gradually increase the speed. Switch to a regular bar when the movement is comfortable. Now combine the hip and whip motion. Keep the heels on the platform during the explosion. The last stage is the hip and whip motion with the explosive jump. Refer to the explosion point to maximum extension point movement to review the technique of the explosive jump at this position. Remember, jump through the middle of the foot. Do not go up on the toes. Start at a fast speed to fully integrate the two movements, then gradually try to increase the explosiveness and height of the jump. Remember, this is only the preliminary movement to the pull-under motion. Try alternating the movement of the scoop to explosion point with the scoop to maximum extension point during a set to fine-tune the motion of the scoop with the explosion into a full extension. Also concentrate on developing a smooth, powerful extension with no hesitation between the movements. The scoop to pull-under movement can be trained in 3 stages: slow, fast, and explosive. Refer to the pull-under movement to review the position of the feet at each of these speeds. With a light bar, slowly combine the scoop to maximum extension point and the maximum extension point to pull-under movements. Switch to a regular bar and begin jumping out lightly to the squat stance. Gradually increase the speed until one is explosively stomping the platform. Be cautious of any pain in the feet, ankles, knees, hips, and lower back. Try alternating different combinations of the scoop to explosion point, scoop to maximum extension point, and scoop to pull-under movements during a set to develop the rhythm and timing of exploding up and exploding under. We recommend the scoop to front squat movement be trained in 3 stages: 1/3 squat, 2/3 squat, and full squat. One will progress from a slow to an explosive speed in each of these stages. With a light bar, slowly combine the movement of the scoop to pull under with the explosion point to front squat. Start slow and squat to one's highest position. Slowly work down to a full squat or one's lowest position. When the movement and the squat positions feel comfortable, gradually increase the speed. Be very cautious while performing this movement at an explosive speed with a light bar. Switch to a regular bar and gradually increase the speed and explosiveness of the movement. Work down into each squat position. Try alternating different combinations of the scoop to maximum extension point, scoop to pull under, and scoop to front squat movements during a set to develop a strong feeling of bringing the explosion point to the bar, finishing the extension, exploding under the bar, and receiving the bar at the shoulders. Now the clean lift really comes together. As one builds the lift from the platform during this last level, keep the following statements in mind. 1. Any failure to reach the point of maximum extension is an early termination of the pull. And 2. Overextending the pull decreases the upward velocity of the lift, which decreases the time for getting under the bar. The lift-off to explosion point movement is trained in 3 stages: hip thrust, trunk whip, and hip and whip. Begin with the hip thrust motion. Using a light bar, combine the movements of the lift-off with the scoop to explosion point. Start very slowly, then gradually increase the speed. Switch to a regular bar when this movement is comfortable. Now use the trunk whip motion. Begin slowly, then gradually increase the speed. Switch to a regular bar when the movement is comfortable. Now combine the hip and whip, slowly at first, then fast. Switch to a regular bar. Alternate styles to feel the integration of the 2 movements. The lift-off to maximum extension point is trained in 4 stages: hip thrust, trunk whip, hip and whip with explosion. With a light bar, slowly combine the lift-off to explosion point movement with the explosion point to maximum extension point movement using the hip thrust motion. Gradually increase the speed. Switch to a regular bar when this movement is comfortable. Next, perform the trunk whip motion. Slowly connect the movements. Gradually increase the speed. Switch to a regular bar when the movement is comfortable. Now combine the hip and whip motion. Slowly at first, then fast. Switch to a regular bar. Finally, combine the hip and whip motion with an explosive jump. Do not go up on the toes. Start at a fast speed and gradually try to increase the explosiveness and height of the jump. Alternate the lift-off to explosion point movement with the explosion point to maximum extension point movement in a set to practice a smooth, powerful, explosive extension with no hesitation. The lift-off to pull-under movement can be trained in 3 stages: slow, fast, and explosive. With a light bar, slowly combine the lift-off to maximum extension point and the maximum extension point to pull-under movements. Switch to a regular bar and begin jumping out lightly to the squat stance. Gradually increase the speed until one is explosively stomping the platform. Be cautious of any pain in the feet, ankles, knees, hips, and lower back. Try alternating different combinations of the lift-off to explosion point, lift-off to maximum extension point, and the lift-off to pull-under during a set to feel the path of the bar as it travels upward. Keep the bar close to the body throughout the movement. Now one is ready to put it all together. Remember, always pay attention to small details in the technique during every lift. Mistakes made will not only affect the outcome of the lift, but continue to grow as weight is added to the bar. Warning: during the clean pull, one has a tendency to scrape the bar with the thighs. This will create friction which only slows the upward velocity of the bar. It can also cause abrasions to the skin. Try to keep the point of contact at the explosion point as brief as possible. Always wear protective clothing on the thighs when performing this lift. The lift-off to front squat movement, or the clean, is trained in 3 stages: 1/3 squat, 2/3 squat, and full squat. With the light bar, slowly combine the lift off to pull under and the front squat movements. Start at a high squat or power clean position and work down to a full squat. Switch to a regular bar and gradually increase the speed and explosiveness to each squat position. Alternate reps of the lift off to pull under and the front squat movements in a set to develop the speed and confidence to go under the bar. Well, congratulations, you finally made it. You now have in your possession the world's most powerful lift. Maybe the best single multi-joint exercise around. Keep in mind, our intention was not to develop individual exercises to clean heavier and heavier weights. This is the goal of competitive weightlifters. Our approach is that the clean is just one small part of the overall training routine used to enhance athletic performance in other sports. However, we believe that without this lift in the training program, the athlete is at a significant disadvantage when going against those who have developed it. You now have in your arsenal the most powerful athletic movement on the planet.
My name is Bob White, and I'm president of Professional Engineering Services, Incorporated. Coach Stephen Miller has requested that I make a few comments and engineering-related observations concerning Olympic-style weightlifting. My comments and observations do not necessarily reflect the ideas or thoughts of World Class Coaching, LLC, and are made with the hope that these comments stimulate new and innovative ideas for improving the skill of lifting heavy weights, for that is Olympic-style weightlifting. First, we need to understand the difference between power, which we shall label P, and force, which we shall label F. Power P is the rate at which work is performed. Power P can be represented by the following equation. P equals F times D divided by little t, where P equals power, F equals force, D equals distance, and little t equals time. Whereas force F is that which causes all variations of velocity, either in magnitude or direction, of all matter, such as a weightlifting bar and its related weights. Complete force F determination requires magnitude, line of action, and direction. Force can be represented by the equation F equals little m times large A, whereas m equals mass of a body, large A equals acceleration of the body or rate of change of velocity, whereas m equals W over G, where W equals weight and G equals acceleration due to gravity. Whereas weight W is the weight of a given body in a given locality and measures the force required to support the body against gravity in that locality. Whereas little g is the falling acceleration due to gravity and is equal to 32.1740 feet per second and may be called standard acceleration. It is my opinion that one should explore force F rather than power P as an avenue to understanding Olympic-style weightlifting. I realize that in today's world we like to talk about power P. However, I will confine my remarks to force F as it relates to weightlifting. The two figures represent the lifter in action. Figure number 1 represents the pull of the lifter to a height h, whereas figure 2 represents the time required, called T sub O, where the lifter has finished the final pull. Let me first define the symbols which I will be using. W equals weight, which is the bar and the plates combined. H equals height of the bar at the release point, which is the end of the last pull by the lifter. V equals velocity of the bar after release of the bar, and V sub O equals upward velocity of the bar at the release point by the lifter. W equals weight, which is the bar and the plates combined. H equals height of the bar at the release point, which is the end of the last pull by the lifter. V sub O equals the upward velocity of the bar at the release point by the lifter. T, small t that is, equals time. T sub O equals the time for the lifter to get under the weight before the weight starts downward. Capital T equals the time for the lift from the floor to the release height H. Capital A equals the average acceleration of the weight W during the lift to height H. F equals the force exerted by the lifter and is assumed to be constant over the entire force movement. M equals the mass of the weight, which is equal to W over G, and G, little g that is, equals the acceleration due to gravity. The force F equation number 1 is F equals W plus M times capital A, which can also be defined as equaling the W plus W over G times capital A, which is equal to W times the quantity 1 plus capital A over G, whereas H equals V sub O times capital T over 2, and V sub O equals 2 times capital H over capital T, and T, capital T that is, equals 2H divided by V sub O, where V sub O equals capital A times capital T, and thus V sub O over capital T equals capital A. Also, capital A equals V sub O divided by 2 capital H over V sub O, which equals V sub O squared divided by 2 capital H. Also, V sub O minus G T sub O equals 0, and that is the condition at which time the weight is moving neither upward or downward. From equation number 1, we have equation number 2. And equation number 2 is defined as F equals W times the quantity 1 plus V sub O squared divided by 2 capital H little g, close the parentheses. If we assume a W of 200 and an H of 3, the graph 1 expresses the relationship between F and V sub O. In terms of T sub O, then we have the equation F equals W times the quantity 1 plus G T sub O squared divided by 2H, which equals W, the parentheses 1 plus V sub O squared divided by 2GH, close the parentheses. Since V sub O minus G T sub O equals 0, then we have V sub O squared equals G squared times T sub O squared. Thus we have equation number 3. And 3 is defined as T sub O equals the quantity F divided by W minus 1, close parentheses, times 2H divided by G, all raised to the 1/2 power. Again, if we assume a W of 200 and an H of 3, the graph 2 expresses the relationship between T sub O and F. We now have derived equations 1, 2, and 3. What does each say to us in terms of lifting heavy weights? First, let's look at equation 1, which is F equals W, parentheses, 1 plus A over G, close parentheses. We see that the average acceleration of the weight during the lift to height H is very important. The greater the acceleration magnitude, the greater the required force necessary by the lifter. Second, let's look at equation 2, which is F equals W, parentheses, 1 plus V sub O squared divided by 2hg. We immediately notice that the upward velocity V sub O of the bar at the release point by the lifter impacts the force required by the lifter as a square of V sub O, while at the same time, if the height of the bar at V sub O is reduced, the force required by the lifter is increased. Therefore, it would appear that the lifter should attempt to catch the bar at the highest height practical for a successful lift based upon the force requirement. Third, let's look at equation 3, which is T sub O equals parentheses, second parentheses, F divided by W minus 1 close parentheses times 2H divided by G, all raised to the 1/2 power. Remember that T sub O is the time the lifter has to get under the weight before it starts downward due to the pull of gravity. Thus, we see that if F and W are equal, then the time T sub O is 0, and thus the weight cannot be lifted. The two items that the lifter has under his control for the increase of T sub O is force F and height H, both of which are to the 1/2 power. It then appears that the faster the lifter goes under the bar, the less force and less height will be required to complete a successful lift. Another way of saying this is fast-moving weak lifters do not exist. What do the three equations say to me? They say, 1. Become as strong as possible in order to increase the velocity of the bar at the release point of the bar, for without the ability to exert great force on the bar, the time available is reduced before gravity starts the downward movement of the bar. 2. Develop great speed at moving under the bar could reduce the bar height required at release. The force required to complete the lift should be reduced if the lifter can prevent the bar from going into a negative velocity or starting back down to the bar before the weight is under control. Clearly, there are many factors that go into a successful lift. I realize that I've highlighted only a very few, but my aim is to stimulate your mind toward exploring the art of lifting heavy weights. Remember, think strong and fast.